Hi, I'm Pam Shane. I'm in the Cluttered Corner with Walt Wilkins. Hey, Walt.
Hello, Pam. It's great to see you.
Glad to see you again. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
Yeah, you've been doing all kinds of things.
Yes, ma'am.
Good.
I'm lucky.
I like to hear that. Well, I think the first thing we ought to talk about is Walt and Tina and their first full-length album together.
Yes.
And that comes out.
Officially these days, I'd say our release, it'll be on LoneStarMusic.com by December 11th.
Okay, December 11th. So get that, December 11th.
Yeah.
And it's called?
Be Mine.
Well, that seems appropriate.
Yeah, it's filled with a bunch of love songs, a couple that we wrote and some that have just been songs that we've loved forever.
Oh, that's
would
nice.
sing for fun. And so it's been a fun record to make.
Well, it's said in the thing I was reading today that there are 4 new songs that you have.
4 new songs.
And did you and Tina write those together?
We wrote 2 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, we wrote 2 songs. Tina's an incredible writer. She's real funny. And our styles of writing are very different, so we hardly ever do it together. She's very clever.
Yes.
I'm not clever.
No.
I'm not funny or clever, where she is very funny and clever. So we wrote one of her style songs that I really love, a Western swing tune
great.
that shows off her great sense of humor. And
Can
then
you tell us the title?
that is called "You'd Think By Now."
You'd think by now,
Meaning,
right?
you'd think by now we'd have it all together.
Uh-huh.
It's about us being married 14 years in December, the next month. 14 years, and we don't. It's like we're still dating because we don't know what we're doing.
That's great. That
Somehow
keeps it
scrape
fun.
by all. It does.
Well, that's good because, if you've been doing that for 14 years, I feel another 14 coming on.
I think so. As you know, it's not a picnic every day, but
No.
like my friend Phil Hardage says, it's every day's not Christmas. But it's great, and she's wonderful. Like today, she made me laugh a half dozen times before I got in the car this morning.
Now that's really interesting because you read these surveys in magazines, and we ask 1,000 men this and we ask 1,000 women that, and the women always say that the guy having a sense of humor that they appreciate is almost number one, almost universally.
Yes.
They say that.
Yeah.
Men don't say that so often, and yet I notice that the happiest couples I know, they each make the other laugh.
I think that's true.
It's important.
Life's
hard.
Life is hard, and Tina she's just one of the most wickedly funny, and she doesn't show the whole world that all the time, but she's so funny. And
That's
so
great.
the song that we wrote like that, I think people will get a kick out
People
of
will
it.
enjoy it. Well, it's interesting. I know that both of you are greatly respected as songwriters, and you had a lot of success that way. But I read something today that was a fan comment about you, and I'd like to hear how you react to it. This woman said that when she goes to hear you, that your songs and your voice make her feel like she's known you all her life.
Oh, man.
That's really a great compliment, I think.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. Thank you
And
for sharing that.
how do you do that? How do you write those songs that are just so human?
I don't know. I don't know. So my writing, I work with a lot of younger folks, and people ask me all the time, well, how do you write, or what would you say? How do I write? Or I will tell you that I honestly knew I was a writer when I was a kid. I mean, 8, 9, 10. I knew I was a writer, and I knew at 13 I wanted to write songs. And I just knew it. I mean, I knew, and I considered myself a writer. I just kind of knew it. And my family's not writers necessarily, but everyone read. So we had books everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad had a great record collection. And so between those two things, I became a songwriter. But I don't know what to say to someone who is an older age would say, well, how do I start writing? I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Because for me, I just knew I was a writer.
Wow, that's so interesting.
And what I do tell young folks, I tell them, here's the books you read. You've got to read Grapes of Wrath, and you've got to read everything by Hemingway. I mean, I just think that's important.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Steinbeck and Hemingway because both of them are regarded as writing conversationally that it's tuned to the way Americans talk.
Absolutely, absolutely. They were direct writers, but they both had enough poetry in them to make it lyrical and captivating. You know, they had these voices, both of them completely unique,
Right.
but both easy to relate to, and both once you got to a certain level of, not when you're 12, but you know. I mean, I remember reading Grapes of Wrath when I was probably 18 in high school and thinking, I don't know, 10 years later, it split my head open, you know.
Yes.
But those, I always tell them, I buy them books, you know, I buy them all, Letters to a Young
Right.
Poet, you know, everyone, you know, that's Rilke, you know, and
Yes.
that's hard stuff to read. But at
Yes.
some point, those things work their way in, and I think it makes us all better writers.
Well, I think that's a great thing to hear because that's what the novelists and the poets say too.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm talking about, do you know Billy Collins?
Yeah, oh my
So,
God, he's incredible.
Yeah, and
Incredible.
it's just like somebody talking to you, somebody funny talking to you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, very
And it's
good.
funny because you know in this scene, there's so many guys running around and it's macho and trucks and all that, and that's all fine, and that is how we grew up.
But it isn't
I
all
played
of
sports
life.
and all, but it's not all. And you shouldn't be ashamed to read a book of poetry because especially if you want to be a songwriter. You know, well, you might want to read Billy Collins would be good,
Yes.
or Barry with I can't think of his first name, but read some poetry. God, my God, read haiku. You know, there's a great way to learn some writing.
Instead of doing it on texting.
Yeah, or just reading Grisham, and he's a great writer, but that shouldn't be your only reference.
Right, no, it should.
Guy Clark says that around his dinner table, his dad would read Ulysses and the Bible. It was literature. That was the thing, and so that
Well,
makes
that's the
us-
best piece of advice I've heard anybody give, except work hard.
and then work hard, and then yeah.
The Red River Songwriter Festival, speaking of reading and
Woo.
writing,
Yeah.
in New Mexico. You're going there in January.
It's the last weekend of January, and this was really, Drew likes to play down his importance to this, but Drew Kennedy, who, speaking of songwriters, I think he's one of the great songwriters in Texas. I mean, right now, he's as good as anybody, and he really knocks me out, even though he's much younger than me, at least 20 years. But Drew had this idea, and he invited a bunch of his favorite people, and this will be the 4th year. It's always it's the last weekend of January up in Red River at the Mother Lode Saloon and the dance hall, and those two places are so tied in to the history of Texas music, like as we know it. That's where Ray Wiley wrote Up Against the Wall.
Oh, good Lord.
And that was a hangout in the 70s for Murphy and,
Right.
and Livingston and Ray Wiley, all those guys. So it's an important part of our thread of who made us all who we are. Anyway, it's Drew Kennedy, Josh Grider, Susan Gibson, Brandy Zidane, Kelly McQueen. And we're the kind of constants each year. And the guests this year, Ray Wiley was the guest first year, and then Bruce Rosen. And then this year it is Matresa Berg and Jeff Hanna.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, she's one of the great
Gosh,
writers.
Yes.
Jeff Hanna, who was a charter member of Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, so this is a big year. The other special guest is one of the greatest writers in the world right now, Lori McKenna. I don't know if you're
I
familiar
don't
with
know
her.
her.
She's from Massachusetts, but she's a dear friend and one of the great writers. So it's going to be real special. Last year, it was my favorite weekend of the year.
Well, that's great. Can
And-
people come?
Oh gosh, yes. But it's
Okay.
small and intimate. It's all acoustic, and this year, I think it's going to sell out for the first. It's grown exponentially. It started with 30, I think, the first year.
Oh, how great.
And 90. Last year was like 200, and I think that the ceiling is little less than 300 people, and I think we'll sell out this year.
Super.
And it's real intimate and fun.
Great.
Yeah.
I have to ask you this, because it
Anything.
always is something I want to ask you. Mr. Chiaro?
Mr. Caro's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where's that come from? Is that your word?
It's my word. We had just started playing, and we had just played a few gigs, and I knew we were going to keep playing for a long time. In which we have, we're in our 8th year,
That's great.
and I can't believe it. That's a long time for a band.
Yes.
So the Mystic Arrows will be 8
Beat
years
the
old.
Beatles.
Yeah, almost. And so Mystic Arrows, after we played a few gigs, I didn't want to just be Walt Wilkins and the band or Walt Wilkins Band. I had a band in Nashville called Walt Wilkins Band. I wanted a name, and I swear I was planting a tree at our house out in Cedar Park, Texas.
Okay.
And I was planting a tree, and I wasn't even thinking about it. And this name popped into my head, and it was hot, and I was dirty, and I thought Mystic. I was like, my God. I ran inside, looked it up, because I thought, surely I didn't just think of this. This must be something that's coming. I ran inside, looked all over the internet.
Yeah.
I remember getting everything dirty around me, but I was so excited. And but I really wanted to, and so there we were. We were
So
the
it's
Mystic
all
Arrows.
your own words.
I don't know where it
I
came from.
love it. That's
But I think it's a
great.
very evocative name.
I do
The
too.
Mystic Arrows.
Wonderful. So, Be Mine comes out on LoneStar.com December
December
11th,
Yes.
and then it'll be available everywhere after the first of the year.
I think that's the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
And also something else that's kind of cool is
Yes.
Drew Kennedy and Josh Grider. Josh had this idea for have a Christmas single.
Oh yes, I thank you for bringing that up.
Did you know about it?
I did.
Oh,
Dawn
cool.
told me about it.
So it'll probably go to radio next week,
Okay.
and we ended up Josh and Drew and I did a remake of If We Make It Through December, the Merle Haggard song, and it came out great. And in fact, Christy, Josh's wife Christy, and my wife Tina, two of the best singers that I know. They're amazing. They're both could sing in any studio in the
Wow.
country anytime. They did these really beautiful arrangements. So it's real exciting.
Oh, it sounds like it. I can't wait to hear it.
So I hope it's on the radio.
Well, thanks for coming to the Cluttered Corner.
It's an honor, and it's great to see y'all.
Great, thank you.
When it was country, it was truer, it was greener, and it was bluer. It was closer to God in the fiddle and the plow.